All right, all right, all right. It's almost that time of year. The time when I set the foundation for supreme and total dominance at my fantasy football draft. How can I be so confident? Because I use the ultimate draft kit from the Fantasy Footballers. Man, it updates all off-season, so I never worry about using old busted information. Consistency charts, auction values, full projections. Oh baby, this thing's got it all. You want to keep it 100 for your draft? Head to ultimatedraftkit.com and get your copy today.
Hey, this is Kenyon Drake. You're listening to the Fantasy Footballers Podcast.
Welcome to the Fantasy Footballers Podcast, coming to you from Draft.com Studios with your hosts, Andy Holloway, Jason Moore, and Mike Wright.
What's going on? That's not what you're supposed to say. You know, Maddie has me in a mood. Oh, who's smoother? Matthew McConaughey, Kenyon Drake.
Are we talking about car commercials?
I imagine Matthew has it on lockdown. I call him Matthew because we're close. I no last name necessary.
I call him M. Diddy.
Wow. Welcome in to the Fantasy Footballers Podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, congratulations. You get to see us wear the exact same clothing that we wore on the Tuesday show.
It was so good. We had to double up.
Well, I mean, we're traveling to Philadelphia for a show tonight. You expect us to change clothes?
No, I was going to go with we're just putting in so much effort and work and time that we just sleep here in our clothes. We don't brush. We don't eat. We don't do nothing. Well, we eat.
I brush.
What if we show up to the live show wearing these T-shirts?
That would be cool for the few hundred people that are there for that event.
Well, they won't get it, but then later on YouTube, it's going to be this is happening. This is happening.
Thursday, July 26th.
No washing.
Fantasy Footballers Podcast. Thanks for subscribing on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, YouTube, wherever you're at. However you're listening, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it. The NFL season is fastly approaching, and we have a live show tonight in Philadelphia. It is going to be a good one. In New York tomorrow.
It's going to be great.
You can still grab a ticket. If it's before that showtime, grab a ticket at ballerslive.com if they're not sold out, which
check.
They may be. But never fear. You will not miss those episodes. In Philly, we're going through the biggest storylines in fantasy football for the 2018 season. In New York, we're going through our ice and fire players. It's going to be fun. Both of those podcasts will be released on Apple Podcasts. So if you're subscribing and listening, I'm not exactly sure what days next week they'll be. It's likely Philadelphia will be the Saturday show, and it's likely that New York will be the Tuesday show. Is that right, Brooks?
Yes, sir.
If you do your job, that's what's going to happen.
Look, if you don't get the shows in that order, you can just at Brooks on Twitter.
Yes. All right, quick question of the day. By the way, we are going through the AFC East. The divisional breakdowns continue. If you wanted to hear the NFC or AFC West, it's a couple episodes back, so check them out. We've also got interviews with Jerick McKinnon and Melvin Gordon on those shows, and you'll enjoy them. Quick question. How much – wait, Brooks, is this a voicemail question?
Oh, yeah.
I just caught that. Now I got to go find it.
It's ready
Here we
for
go.
you.
All right.
Hey, this is Ben from Virginia. I'm in a 12-team half-point PPR league, but in our league we start 3 wide receivers and 2 running backs, and then, of course, your flex, tight end, and QB. So my question is, do you value wide receivers more because you're starting more, or do you value running backs more because of the depth you can get later in drafts at wide receiver? Thanks, guys. Love the show.
Great question. Did he say it was a 12-team league?
I heard 12-team half point, but I don't know if we can trust Ben because Ben wasn't sure if he was from Virginia or not.
He could be from anywhere.
Yeah.
That sounds like a cover. That was Brooks.
Brooks? Is this you from Virginia, maybe?
Ben from Virginia.
I do start 3 wide receivers in one of my main leagues.
Yeah,
so
we're on
curious.
36 starting wide receivers.
At least.
You
got the flex
because you have a flex position.
Yeah,
it
so
be up
this
to 40. Go on.
Yeah, well, I was cutting you off, but this does change
the
things
next
a little
word was
bit.
48.
I mean, your
counting by
league,
12.
Your league format definitely dictates how you draft. It makes wide receivers more important. Not only does it make the amount of wide receivers you have to start more important, but it really severely pushes your flex position towards a wide receiver being the right play to start there, simply because at the very tip top of running back and wide receivers, running backs outscore wide receivers. In the second tier, they're all about equal. And once you get past that second tier of running back and you get into the third tier running backs, third tier wide receivers and on, wide receivers in any kind of half point or full point are going to outscore them. Now, I said on our Minneapolis show, saddle a stud. You want one of those running backs. And the question has been posed to me of would this format change that? And absolutely not. No way in the world would it change whether or not I want to lock in one of those studs at the top, those workhorse running backs. I would still rather have Melvin Gordon than Julio Jones.
That's what I was going to ask you about. Does Melvin Gordon does it feel like Melvin Gordon has locked into he's the 6th pick for you in the draft?
Yeah. He is, to me, the 6th pick. I said on that, Antonio Brown is a stud, so he counts for that value. But I think there is a benefit if you're able to lock up those early, hardcore, great workhorse running backs. It allows you for the rest of the draft to play a little bit more with wide receivers. Usually at the end of a draft, I like to have more running backs and wide receivers, not necessarily in this format. So if I've locked up great running backs, then I can go ahead and take more flyers, more shots at wide receiver.
Yeah, it's a supply-demand situation. I'm far more confident going wide receiver if I'm at the back of the first round. I'm with Jason. If I'm in those first 5, I'm going to say 5 picks for me. It's the running backs. After that, though, between Melvin Gordon and Antonio Brown, I think that's a very tough decision.
Yeah,
to make for me personally.
I would lean towards Antonio just because his consistency has been so.
So at 6, you would take Antonio Brown then?
No, at 6 I would take Melvin Gordon, but I would take Melvin Gordon over Julio.
I'm hearing you wrong. Then.
No, I would take Melvin Gordon over Julio. Okay. He is my 6. Antonio is my 5. Does that make sense?
Oh, okay. So wait. So which of the running backs is falling out?
Kamara. I'm just a little bit lower.
Okay. No. That makes sense now. Now I am tracking with you.
All right.
It is. The difference between Todd Gurley's finish last year, total fantasy points, half-point league, and the number 10 running back was 166 fantasy points. The difference between the 1 and 10 wide receiver last year was 66 fantasy points. You have to go down to basically wide receiver 50 to get to that gap.
To be fair,
I know that's just the number 1 guy. That doesn't represent everything.
In this past season, wide receiver scoring, at the top, it was down. But you are correct. A top 3 running back is the biggest advantage in all of fantasy football. But do not be concerned if you are at the back of the first and the draft is falling a certain way and you take 2 wide receivers. You're fine starting out that way.
Absolutely.
All right. Hopefully that helps. We're going to get right into the divisional breakdown. Before I do, I want to remind you can get a signed baby blue Keenan Allen jersey.
Baby blue.
Is that powder? What's powder blue, baby blue?
It's powder.
Yeah.
I mean, what's
the difference between powder blue and baby blue?
Yeah.
One is bald with electric powers. No.
Okay.
Mike's got it.
I got it now.
That is a powder reference.
I got it. Yeah. It took
Only
me a
here on
sec.
the Fantasy Footballers.
Now, when you said bald with electric powers, for a split second, I thought you meant Keenan Allen himself.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
Because he's bald and he's got charged up.
Yeah.
But you
Powder
went powder.
reference.
That's good.
Everyone's favorite movie from yesterday.
Yeah,
Powder.
that was last week.
Oh.
Signed
Rent it with your kids.
Stephon Diggs jersey.
Powder.
A signed DeAndre Hopkins mini helmet, FootClanGiveaway.com to win that. And we didn't bring it up on Tuesday. It had just happened. But, thoughts and prayers with Tony Sperano, his family, all of his friends, all of those around him and that organization. Very sad news to see that. Obviously, we've been around the game for quite a while now, and through his time as a head coach with Oakland, and as a impactful piece of the offensive line coaching.
Wildcat, man.
Yeah, that was Tony Sperano in Miami. So, thoughts and prayers with his family as they go through this difficult time. Very unexpected, obviously, but that happens sometimes.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and get into our main event.
Let's get divisional.
Okay, now I want you guys to harness all the positive energy you can. Can you do this, Jason?
Woo!
I know you just lost a game of shuffleboard.
Oh, stop.
You and Mike lost to Brooks and myself. And I guess when I say a game, I mean a lot because we've won 6 consecutive games. But I want you to take those thoughts and feelings, emotions, I want you to just wash them away. Because we've got to talk about the AFC East, and we can't possibly be stuck in a negative place.
That's going to be tough.
Next division.
Next division. All right, well, then let's start with the Patriots.
We can do it.
Step 1.
I mean, if we want positivity for fantasy football, I think that's usually a good place to start.
Now, 2 teams made the playoffs from the AFC East last year. The Patriots were 13-3. They scored 156 more points than the second-place team, the Buffalo Bills, who scored 302. And also the Bills gave up an additional 63 more points against than the Patriots did, but got in at 9-7. Mike, I believe they're the only negative point differential?
There was 2. The Titans and the Bills had a negative point differential, and they snuck in the playoffs.
The Dolphins were 6-10, a disappointing season for them. They lost Ryan Tannehill, and they had just been coming off a playoff season. And the New York Jets at 5-11. So let's start at the top. This is the team at the top of every segment about the AFC East for the last decade. The New England Patriots. Now, here's where I want to go. Now, Sony Michel, first-round draft pick, that made fantasy headlines, right? You bring in a guy, you lose Deion Lewis, you bring in a guy like Sony Michel to be with Rex Burkhead, whose signed jersey is on our wall today. James White is still there, and
Jeremy Hill and Gillislee are still technically
and Jeremy Hill and Gillislee
too.
are both there as well.
Roster cuts have not been made.
You also have big news. Julian Edelman, the suspension, 4 games. He's out. So we're talking through Chris Hogan. We'll talk through all these other positions, running back and wide receiver is what I'm saying. But I want to start at quarterback with Tom Brady because last year he was the number 1 in the NFL in passing yardage, number 3 in touchdowns. There's another 10 metrics that he was within that top 3. Pure dominance last season. Did it without Julian Edelman. Still has Rob Gronkowski. Still has Chris Hogan and company, and we'll get Edelman back.
Lost Cooks.
Lost Brandon Cooks. Why is Tom Brady so kind of, what's the right word for it? He is, the conglomeration of experts does not have him in that top 5 category.
Yeah, I mean, I could say that.
Or at least in that top 3. Nobody's coming out saying Tom Brady is the number 1 quarterback for 2018.
This fella's got him top 5 still.
Where do you have him?
5.
Okay. So, yes, you found my magical loophole in the phrase. Look, do you see him at 1, at 2? Why is the guy with the leading passing yardage with all these weapons where you know he's going to win 13 games, where he has another weapon in Sony Michel out of the backfield, where he gets Edelman back, where he has Gronk? Why can he not be the number 1 quarterback this season?
I think he can be the number 1 quarterback. And we're looking at different things because from where the things I have seen, I still feel like he is considered a top 5, if not a top 3 guy.
He's not being drafted ahead of Deshaun Watson. He's not being drafted ahead of Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, where's in ADP right now? He is the quarterback. What do you have that?
I'm about to pull it up for you.
I have it. He's number 4.
Okay,
so it's still
he
top
is
5,
getting respect.
But I will
behind
say,
Russell Wilson, that makes sense.
I will say the range of rankings on Tom Brady are far wider than the guys going around that area. I mean, Aaron Rodgers, I think his worst ranking among the industry is 2nd. Right? Meanwhile, there's going to be people who will say Tom Brady's done. They're calling for the end. it didn't look like the end to me, but I think losing Brandon Cooks actually is it factors in what is the health of Gronk. So the range of outcomes for Tom Brady, who, while he was I believe the quarterback 3 on the season this past year, I've talked about how after those first few games where he padded up the total points, it was a bit like Drew Brees, where it was this back end type quarterback 1 performance more often than not. So it wasn't dominant. And now we're going on 3 straight years of Tom Brady just destroying people's fantasy football playoffs.
Oh yeah, I mean that's part of. I think when some people have a problem with Brady, it is the fact that he disappeared so hard at the end of the season, and so that kind of leaves that taste in your mouth. In my rankings, I've got Tom Brady 8, and I completely agree. He could absolutely finish as the quarterback 1. I don't see that without outside the realm of possibility. But age does factor in. He's going to be 41 before the start of the season, and I haven't noticed anything that says you've lost a step. His brain is always a step ahead. I would love to have Tom Brady on my team this year, but the risk is there. I mean, look, the same exact stuff could be said about Peyton Manning across the board, how great he was. He was always and still is a step or 2 steps ahead of everyone watching the game, but once he got an injury at that age, he couldn't get it back.
Because he wasn't the plant man.
Right, sure. I mean, maybe Tom Brady's diet will take him to the 45, but you've also got bad vibes around the Patriots, and we have to be honest about that. I mean, every report coming out about infighting, about problems, unhappiness, those things affect the team. Now
they could go 12-4.
They absolutely could. Look at the division
instead of 13-3 because of the infighting. I'm saying it was a joke, Jason. It hasn't hurt him.
I've got them at 10, which is like.
Oh, you have the Patriots at 10 wins?
Yeah. Yep, that's right. You heard it here. The demise of the Patriots. Only barely double-digit victories.
That's a pretty hot take.
Yeah,
interesting.
So that's how I see it. And also, you got to keep in mind they did draft Sony Michel. I believe Sony Michel is they're the best running back that they've had in a while. And so you've got a guy coming in that could succeed more on the ground and maybe some of those touchdowns, if he goes from, Brady last year with 32 touchdowns and he ends up with 28, a good number, he's going to be, the quarterback 8.
I will say a good rushing game did not hurt Tom Brady last year. They were 10th in yards per game on the ground, 2nd in the air.
Hard to imagine a player producing to the level of Deion Lewis production.
Right.
But if you gave me, let's start here. Running back breakdown, Sony Michel, Rex Burkhead, James White, and then I'm going to put etc. to define Jeremy Hill, Mike Gillisley, Brandon Bolden will be on the roster, etc. Give me your carry breakdown estimate. What do you expect to see from this team? Ooh. The high investment in Sony Michel, but yet the understanding of Rex Burkhead. He knows what to do on the field. He's been a part of this offense for longer than one training camp. And so, Mike, I know you like Rexy.
I like him a lot,
but
yes.
what is a ceiling season for Rex Burkhead?
The true ceiling.
No injuries considered.
Okay,
no injuries.
That's what you have.
I'm just saying, everybody's healthy. What does Rex Burkhead give you? Is he rushing the ball more than 100 times?
Yes.
Is he rushing the ball more than 200 times?
No. Okay. I've got him around that 160, 165 range.
Does he catch more passes than Sony Michel?
Yes.
Okay. And is he the goal line back?
Yes. So that's Rex Burkhead. He's going later in draft, so you're getting a slight discount. There's going to be some frustrating games where you feel like you can start Rex and he will let you down. But even though Sony Michel, I expect him to be the more predominantly used running back with Deion Lewis, Rex Burkhead is still going to be on the field, and Rex Burkhead will still get 12 to 15 touches a game by my estimation, which if that includes goal line, that's a huge deal for a running back, especially a running back you can get in that, where are we talking, 7th round?
You have to
right
imagine
around there for Burkhead.
James White will be on the field as well. I mean, he's going to be on the field in third down situations
but
a lot. Or maybe short time situations, 2-minute drills, things like that.
Yeah, the 2-minute drill, of course, but I'm not.
I mean, James
I'm
White
not really
last
worried
year
about that.
Last year, James White had 56 receptions,
but once
for 429 yards.
While
Burkhead
was healthy, he was the passing downs back. And you have to say that about Rex Burkhead when healthy, because it was not a healthful season. He got injured right away, came back, had an awesome stretch of games where he was, in fact, the running back 10 over a period of 5 or 6 games.
Better catch percentage by Rex Burkhead than James White on his targets, 83% to 77%. Better yards per reception on those receptions, 7.7 for White, 8.5 for Burkhead. So at least from a production standpoint, if they're looking at the same things we're looking at, and
Uncle Billy is.
Better yard per carry, better yard per reception, better catch percentage. A lot of reason to believe Burkhead didn't get – the injuries are a concern. Getting banged up is a concern.
Absolutely. But Rex Burkhead was extremely efficient. He's got top 15 upside if he indeed takes over the goal line duties. Now, I'm not convinced.
I guess the way LeGarrette Blount had top 15 value even if he didn't offer you a lot elsewhere.
Yeah,
I'm not, being around the goal line.
I'm not convinced that he will overtake Sony Michel or hold Sony Michel out from the goal line work.
Right.
But if I'm deciding between these two guys where I think Rex Burkhead will get more passing work and has a 50-50 shot with Sony of being the goal line back, and one of these guys is, early 5th round and one is later 7th round, I'm probably going to draft someone else in the 5th I believe in and grab Burkhead, who
that's exactly where they're going right now.
At the very least, Burkhead will be a usable asset throughout the season to some degree.
7th round pick.
He doesn't have the upside that Sony has. Sony has the upside of, hey, maybe he's an RB1 this whole season, week in, week out.
Sure.
He just takes over and is the guy. That's the hope that when you're drafting Sony Michel, you're just desperately hoping he becomes a 250 carry workhorse type player.
All right, Mike, we know you love Rob Gronkowski, but if you were sitting there at the 12 and
112.
The
at the turn?
You're at the turn. You love him. Is there a place where you're taking him at the turn?
Honestly, there is. It's all gonna depend on how the draft shakes out, and I can't give you the exact sequence of that, but I can tell you
top secret.
I don't know, because it's just a convoluted thing of, okay, this guy goes at 6.
Does a wide receiver sit there that you like more?
But I can tell you, in my best ball drafts, in the 2nd round, I'm taking Gronk. It's just happening. The 4-game suspension of Edelman, the possibility of the last hoorah of Tom Brady, Gronk going for their final Super Bowl. He's just dominant, and at finally getting the right price. I mean, I don't want to take him, so to speak, at the turn, because you're paying not just ADP, you're overpaying for Gronk, and that's never been how I've played fantasy football. But this year, just the way that my teams have shaken out, I've been ending up with Gronk and been happy with my teams.
All right. I guess the last question people will have about this team, I mean, there are many, but this is an overview of what's happened this offseason. Look, they added Jordan Matthews. Some people wanting to know, does he take advantage of Julian Edelman's absence during the first 4 weeks? Is it someone else? Talk of Malcolm Mitchell being shopped today for a trade. They obviously lost Deion Lewis. Is there anything else that stands out to you? Do you want to speak on Jordan Matthews? Do you want to speak about where you're valuing Edelman in the draft?
I like Edelman at his price. I like holding on to him for the 4-game suspension. Like I said when I talked about Ingram a couple weeks ago, you don't want both of these guys on your team, but a player that you can replace because you're planning for the suspension already, and what their upside brings once they are back from that 4-game suspension. It's a player that you're not going to find them on the waiver wire, essentially, a value that they bring, unless you just strike waiver wire gold. But the rest of the wide receivers it's a mess, right? Because Jordan Matthews is allegedly going to fill in for Julian Edelman for the first 4 games. Hogan was fantastic in the early part of the season, but he got hurt. That's kind of been a thing with Chris Hogan his entire career, is he gets easily banged up. There's talk of Kenny Britt has been impressive, yet he's starting training camp on the PUP. Dorsett is kind of the forgotten man who they traded for. He wasn't originally a first-round pick. It's a mess here, and I think you should take a shot, though, at least late in your draft, between picking your guy, Jordan Matthews, or Kenny Britt.
And we'll bring you more news from training camp and the way things are shaking out with those secondary options in New England. I want to say this before we move on to our next team here. Look, go to pristineauction.com, Pristine auction.com. Sign up for a free account, and then browse their daily auctions. If you're watching on YouTube, the very impressive autographed Rex Burkhead jersey is on the wall behind us. Here's what's gone on Pristine Auction in the last day, because they have hundreds of daily auctions. Juju Smith-Schuster.
Oh, yeah.
Signed NFL football, $55 to Jason.
We haven't
Juju
heard from Jason in about 5 minutes.
How much was that, Juju jersey?
$55.
55!
Oh. Yeah, you guys took care of it. Kareem Hunt signed Chiefs jersey, $59. Devontae Adams signed Packers jersey, $98. Lev Bell signed Steelers jersey, just $62. And if you're like me and you buy into the Corey Davis potential, because I'm not even going to call it hype. You need more than like about 4 catches to get hype for this season. But the potential of Corey Davis, a signed Titans Corey Davis jersey, $46 yesterday. Best deals in all of sports memorabilia, longtime partner of the show. If you haven't checked it out, let them know the Fantasy Footballers sent you. All right, we moving on?
Yep.
Bills.
Unfortunately.
Well,
Jeez. Wow.
I will say this. Of the 3 teams we have left to cover, I have a little bit of love to share for one of them, and it's surprised myself.
Oh, you declare?
I declare.
so
It's not the Bills.
Here's the thing. I guess I've been pretty supportive of the Bills on this show compared to you guys in the last few months. You have this cloud now hanging over LaShawn McCoy. We don't expect it to affect this season. We don't know. We really don't know anything.
Don't know.
There hasn't been any news. But let's put it this way. LaShawn McCoy was going to be the one volume-filled bright spot of this team. Or at least in Jason's case, like somewhat bright spot.
It's a nice dim light.
A dim volume.
He doesn't disagree with the volume.
No, I don't. I mean,
this was a rushing team, 6th in the league last year because of Tyrod Taylor and LaShawn McCoy combining for what they did. Negative point differential, not a lot of weapons right now. Kelvin Benjamin can never stay healthy, and even if he is healthy, is he the best number 1 option for A.J. McCarron and Josh Allen? If Zay Jones is healthy, no one was worse at catching the ball when he was targeted than Zay Jones last year. It was appalling. Charles Clay, we've seen what Charles Clay is. I like Charles Clay. But I like Charles Clay for what he is. He's not going to become something new this year.
Right.
He is a middle-of-the-road, productive, not fantasy impressive tight end.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect way to say it. He's not fantasy impressive, but he is a fantasy usable tight end, in the right matchup.
Well, this past season,
Yeah.
Charles Clay
Yeah.
on this show was Mr. Necessary.
Well, sure.
For a reason, because they needed a pass-catching weapon.
And that very well may continue this season. They will need pass-catching weapons this year. They've also lost 3 starters on the offensive line. Cordy Glenn, Richie Incognito retired. Eric Wood is gone.
And to echo that, Pro Football Focus has projected them as the 29th best offensive line in football, despite finishing last year as the 7th best.
So it feels...
Those losses are huge, and a lot of times we hear from Bills fans saying, no, this guy's in the wings, they were prepared. Reminds me so much of what we heard last year when the
Cincinnati
Bengals lost a big chunk of their line. Like, no, they were prepped, guys were in the wings. I trust Pro Football Focus's offensive line gradings. They look at each player that is slotted in and the depth and all of that. And
look, players
the line's gonna be
emerge.
bad.
I'm not saying that they don't.
Of course.
Players emerge, and then they become stars. They don't start that way all the time. That being said, this is a fantasy show. Look, I feel like the Bills currently, the situation in Buffalo is you're resting on the fact you made the playoffs. Congratulations. You had a nice year, but normally those teams don't ship off their starting quarterback. So you don't have your starting quarterback. You don't have your offensive line. You don't have pass-catching weapons that are viable. You play in a division with the Patriots. This is like...
Kelvin Benjamin is a value.
That's what I was going to ask. Where's the actual silver lining? Where's the fantasy value? There's always fantasy value.
The silver lining is with Kelvin Benjamin. Right now in PPR leagues, he's being drafted as the 48th wide receiver off the board. Now, could he finish as the 48th wide receiver? Absolutely. He's slow and plodding, but he's a big-bodied guy. And when you get near that end zone, you don't have a lot of options there. I really do think that Kelvin Benjamin, I mean, you look at who he's going around, right? Calvin Ridley, Nelson Aguilar, Mike Williams, Kenny Stills, and you've got a guy there in Kelvin Benjamin.
He's at least the number one on his team.
He's the number one on his team. The Bills are going to score points. They're an NFL team. So Kelvin Benjamin is a guy that whenever he ends up on a lot of my rosters.
He does. I can never do it.
Because I can get him so late, and I'm grabbing a...
Now, you don't get to play him in the tight end spot.
That would be really nice.
That would be nice. He is, I believe his game speed score was dead last in the wide receivers, and then behind several tight ends.
I believe it, but he's large.
That was going to be my question. Mike, is there a secret diamond in the rough in Buffalo? Could it be at the quarterback position? Is there a chance that you get a special performance from Josh Allen this year or something to surprise you? I am looking for hope. I want to draft a Bill, Mike. I just want to.
If Josh Allen's the quarterback, it's going to be something.
All right.
When you're here,
Dolphins.
All right. I've heard a lot from Dolphins fans.
Zay Jones has to be better.
He can't not.
That's my key to the Bills offense is Zay Jones. We had a segment a few weeks ago called Meat on the Bone where where they finished for targets as compared to where they finished for fantasy, and you could see just a very strong correlation. Meanwhile, Zay Jones, I'm trying to pull it up. It was as bad as you could possibly be. He was 55th in targets.
All right, now I'm not letting that one go. 55th in targets
and 88th in fantasy finish.
Yeah, he was terrible. He needed to get his head on straight, and if this offseason is any indication, we're still going to be waiting.
Yeah. I believe in you, Zay.
Dolphins.
Dolphins are just interrupting everyone.
You wanted positivity.
Dolphins.
I've got the Dolphins as the number 2 in this division. I think they're going to surprise a little bit. The more that I looked into in preparation for this show, what their offense is like, what their defense is like, and of course the division mates, I think you're going to have a little bit more explosive offense than what they've had in years past. With you've got Jarvis Landry, who is such a crutch but quality player,
right?
Really being inefficient when it comes to NFL explosiveness because he's the short yardage guy. Now you have Kenny Stills, Devontae Parker on the outside. Probably more targets going their way. And I believe that Kenyon Drake is a really good, explosive running back paired with Balaj, a guy that Andy likes. And I need some music, Andy.
Wait a minute.
No! You can't All
right, listen. I have said some really bad things. Oh, Mike's getting
I can't even.
He can't
I can't even.
I've said some bad things about Kalen Balaj, mostly that he's a straight line runner and he's not any good. And I do not believe that he will translate into NFL success, but I am turning the corner a little on my belief that he can't because his weight adjusted speed is incredible.
It's good.
His pass catching ability is very good. And those things to me are more important than your juke ability and your ability to, your running back moves. So if I have to, I'm just putting this against what I always value. And the things that I value are with Balaj. I just don't like the film because it seems like he never can beat a guy side to side ever. So that, but my point is he's explosive. If you're telling me he's not going to be able to, have some breakaway plays, same with Drake. Devontae Parker got off to a hot start last year. You guys remember the hype around Parker?
Yeah.
Preseason was unbelievable.
Yep.
And then the first couple weeks were pretty darn good, and then he got injured, And
look,
that was all she wrote.
This team, I don't know if there's a player more extreme in their possible outcomes than Devontae Parker.
Agreed.
Because I think the team will give up on him. If he doesn't produce for them, they have enough other weapons to,
right.
Grant is still there. We don't even bring up Grant's name. And he produced at the end of the season. If Parker can't do it, they're done with him. It's over. Stills, Wilson, Amendola, Drake out of the backfield, other weapons, I'm with you. I think that fantasy, fans of the Dolphins haven't been happy with us because we haven't spoken very highly of the Dolphins. That's been because there isn't that – this is a fantasy football show. There hasn't been that out there in front of you confident, driving player. Last year you had Landry and Ajayi. They're gone. Now we've had a lot of debate about Drake. Tannehill returns, and you don't know who's going to – like right now, who's the pass-catching leader? Who do you want to start? Tell me the answer. You say Devontae Parker. I'm not going to say Parker.
I absolutely think Devontae Parker.
From a fantasy production standpoint?
Yes,
okay,
from fantasy and from targets.
I'm going to say Albert Wilson.
I still lean Parker as the number one producer. Wilson in terms of receptions. This is very similar to the Patriots wide receivers. I see a situation where any of these four guys can become week to week fantasy relevant, but the path is not the clear one. It's got snakes. It's got vines that are thorny. It's got quicksand. If you make it through, and I'm with Jason that I don't think the team has given up on Devontae Parker yet.
Oh, I don't think they have yet.
I think they will give him the full season because he's that first-round pick. They'll give him the rope. They'll see if he can break out.
They rushed the ball 360 times last season, 31st in the NFL. They have a line that ended 29th in Pro Football Focus's ranking and is projected to be the 20th best this year.
Good news.
Not great.
They're the second best offensive line in this division according to PFF.
The second best. Yeah, I think that there is a gap between. I mean, they may finish second, but not give you a ton of options in the fantasy world. Sure. Yeah, that can happen. I mean, the Bills were an example of that last year. If you didn't have LaShawn McCoy, who were you starting from the Bills last season?
You would stream Tyrod and you'd play Shady.
And you would
some Charles Clay.
Charles
Clay had his games.
But there was nobody you could lean on other than Shady.
Sure.
Correct.
Right. Are we satisfied?
The only other thing I would say is that if you're in a two-quarterback league, we often say if you're in a two-quarterback league, it's nice to draft three. My favorite third quarterback to get right now is Ryan Tannehill because he is unwanted, even in two-quarterback leagues. He rushes enough to where he's going to be a good, stream from your roster addition late in drafts.
You feel like that will continue even though he re-injured his knee last season doing it,
yes.
And now is 2 years removed from that? You think he's going to run the ball?
I do still believe that from what the reports have been from minicamp. I believe he's going to continue rushing.
Interesting. Okay. He did have, it's going back a little ways. He did have a number 8 overall fantasy finish back in 2014, 17th the year after, and then 27th after that with the lost season.
Jets.
All right, let's talk about the Jets.
So here's a good Devontae Parker and Robbie Anderson going right next to each other in drafts.
Oh, give me Robbie.
Oh, by
every
a lot.
day,
yeah,
twice on Sunday.
I would agree.
You doing 2 drafts every Sunday?
Sunday's a really big draft.
It's a big day for football, Mike.
Yeah,
but if you want Robbie Anderson on a Wednesday, I'd rather have Robbie Anderson on Wednesday.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that, but I do think both are good values in the 9th round versus a Jordy and Marquise Goodwin type.
Robbie Anderson last season burst on the scene, had a 6-game stretch during the middle of the season where he had multiple top 5 finishes and was in the top 24 all 6 weeks. Look, there is a lot of unknown on this roster. They've added Isaiah Crowell, Terrell Pryor, Quincy Enunwa comes back from injury, and look, they paid some money for a center.
Right.
And
still not projected to be a great line.
They got who I would say the majority of people expected to be the number 1 pick in this year's draft, Sam Darnold, to be the backup behind Josh McCown.
Maybe. Maybe. We don't even know if – well, I'm saying he could be the starter.
Oh, sure.
There's a world where we see that outcome as they move forward with this team. But Isaiah Crowell, that's a fantasy name that people were excited about last season. It did not pan out in Cleveland, and now you go to a situation where you have to kind of shrug your shoulders and say, well, this is the 19th ranked offense by yards per game on the ground. Not a great defense, so the team had to play. Josh McCown had to establish the passing game last year because they were coming back in a lot of games. What do we think Crowell can really do? I know that I don't think either of you are very excited about Crowell.
No.
I'm excited about the potential for him to have volume again, but is that 200 carries? Is it 250 carries?
I would agree that's what you're getting. So it's okay using the draft capital on Crowell where he's going because I expect him to touch the ball 200-plus times. That could translate. The team, maybe Darnold's actually that good, and this team really does turn things around. It's tough to put faith in a grinder like Isaiah Crowell. I know he had the 1 year where he caught a bunch of passes, but generally speaking, he's been more of a thumper, and he's on a team that we've been talking about offensive lines, ranked as the 31st best in the league by Pro Football Focus.
The 31st best?
So it's not an ideal situation. We need to see how things shake out for this team. There are whispers from the bushes that Bilal Powell could end up being a cut.
I could see that
as
absolutely.
They move toward the season. If
Elijah McGuire is a better value than Bilal Powell right now.
If Powell is in fact cut, then that makes me like Crowell.
It makes me like Elijah McGuire more too.
Of course, but I'm saying if Crowell, Powell, McGuire, if they're all there to start the season, then I'm still willing to draft Crowell because it's hard to find 200 touches at the running back position that late in the draft.
Yeah, he's about the 40th running back off the board.
That's
so you're right.
Crazy.
That's such
great.
Good
We got a lot of feedback on our 12-team mock, Jason, about us not taking Isaiah Crowell, where I believe we went with some other options like Rex Burkhead or something.
Oh, give me Burkhead.
Yeah, look, I would prefer Burkhead as well, just from an upside standpoint. But you can't really call Crowell a bad pick because I believe Crowell will not be efficient with the touches that he gets, just like he was not last year. But that means that based on the touches he's projected to get, he should finish about where he's being drafted. So it's one of those things where even if he's inefficient, he's not a bad pick where he's going right now. And then if he is efficient, you've ended up getting a solid running back too, maybe.
I think that I think that the perspective on Crowell, I think the best thing fantasy owners can do, and what I think I'm doing he's 25 years old. I think you need to keep the jury out on him because he was hyper efficient the year before last in Cleveland, 4.8 a carry, big plays, right?
Yeah, that's true.
That's not plotter.
No,
that's not grinder. He's never had a grinder workload. He's been 198 carries, 206 carries. So, and he can't catch the ball. So I think that the best, 40th off the board seems crazy to me.
I agree.
That seems nuts.
Yeah, he's a starter for one of 32 teams. So that
I
just
feel
simple
like
math.
We are struggling to prop up Isaiah Crowell right now.
Well, I've been more in his camp this offseason than you guys have.
It's fair.
True.
But I was more in his camp last year. And
also true.
That did not pan out for me. Terrell Pryor, does he return to fantasy relevance in New York?
Unlikely.
Quincy Enunwa, major injury, returns this year. Terrell Pryor or Quincy Enunwa, who would you take?
Enunwa by a lot.
I would take Enunwa pretty
Three
easily
times
as well.
3 times on
Why
Sunday.
is that?
I've seen the breakout.
Pryor's had a better year in fantasy than Enunwa ever has.
Terrell Pryor's big year is strange in terms of fantasy football, where everything was going to Terrell Pryor. It was that
He was the only target in town.
everything was perfectly lined up for Terrell Pryor to succeed on a bad team. There was no one else to throw the ball to. Very gifted athletically, but we saw that it didn't translate in Washington. And Enunwa has had success. He was coming into last year. He was the number 1 wide receiver for the New York Jets before he hurt his neck.
He was in line to be a Terrell Pryor last year.
Sure.
The de facto, like Pryor got stuck being in Cleveland. Enunwa has never finished over 44, Pryor had a 20 finish.
Yeah,
I guess I'm confused as to why it's by a margin. If you had said, it's a coin flip, I would have got it. I guess I'm confused. Coming off a major injury, I'm a little bit confused as to why, other than being established in New York where Pryor's coming in fresh.
I mean, it's 2016. He turned 105 targets into 58 receptions, 857 yards, and 4 touchdowns. Yeah, that's not I'm blown away type of numbers, but those are very solid numbers for me.
You believe he's a more talented player than Terrell Pryor?
Not athletically, but he's a better wide receiver by a lot.
Okay. Agree to disagree on that one. Anything else from the Jets?
Do you really want either of these guys?
I think you might be in a position where, look, you might be 2 games into the season. You got somebody to start week 1 and week 2 from New York, the number 1 wide receiver. You're streaming a wide receiver that week because Robbie Anderson's suspended for 2 weeks or gets into more trouble, and you need to.
That's a really good point.
You need to look for a number 1. Sam Darnold, Josh McCown. How do you break down the quarterback situation?
Josh McCown, I still firmly believe enters week 1 as the starter and will start until injured. When Darnold takes over in week 3, I really liked what I saw from Darnold. I think you're going to have a lot of rookie turnovers, and it's going to be a rough year this season. But long term, I like him. That's part of, if you're in a dynasty league, Darnold and Robbie Anderson, I think, have a really nice matching skill set.
That was a low key calling for McCown to be hurt by week 3.
Yeah, sorry, Josh.
The nice thing about McCown is he won't be that hurt. He'll be back.
Oh, yeah.
It's true.
All right. Without further ado, we've got some best ball to talk about.
Best Ball Bonanza, brought to you by Draft.
All right, guys. Draft.com/ballers if you want to play best ball. The time is now.
Yeah, and it's a great time. The time is always a great time to get over there and play.
The time is a great time, as they say.
Look, best ball leagues are super fun. As a reminder, if you haven't played over at draft.com/ballers, you draft a roster on draft. It's 18 rounds deep, and your best players play every week in your starting lineup. And so we wanted to talk a little bit today about roster composition because I think this is the number one thing for winning in best ball leagues. I don't actually think it's just, you got to get the right player every round necessarily. If you look back and kind of crunch the numbers last year on championship teams and who won, there's kind of combinations of players that and roster construction that just works better and is, found more in championship contenders. Sometimes you'll be in a league and you'll be like, oh, this guy started with, 4 quarterbacks off the board. What do you think? It's like, I think that guy wasted his money.
Someone did at me.
That's what I'm referring to.
I think it was 6. I think it was 6 straight quarterbacks.
Yeah, I think he's got.
Thank you for your donation.
I think that guy's got 2 teams in that league. he's putting all of his chips in one.
He's just buying.
So here's what we recommend as roster construction and how to win at the end. You want basically 2 or 3 quarterbacks and 2 or 3 tight ends. And whether you go 2 or whether you go 3 is dependent upon who you're drafting. I love, Mike, you've been talking about how Gronk is like every second round you're grabbing him in best ball. I love getting Gronk. And if I draft Gronk, there is no chance on planet Earth I'm getting 3 tight ends. I'm drafting Gronk, and then I'm getting someone super duper late who I think is a good value, and that affords me other options throughout the year. Because if Gronk gets injured, you're probably not going to win anyways. If Gronk plays, 15, 16 games, your tight end position is already leading the way. Now you have more picks to make at other positions. So it's very similar with quarterbacks, right? I might take 3 quarterbacks in consecutive rounds if I didn't grab any early. I might go round 12, 13, 14 and grab 3 quarterbacks there, or 2 quarterbacks if they're kind of middle and early. Then the real kit and caboodle is, what do you do with running backs and wide receivers? Which way do you go? And you need to have more. This is very important. You need to have more wide receivers than running backs in this format. You start 3 wide receivers, 2 running backs, and a flex. But if you look at how those positions score and the inconsistency of wide receivers, I would much rather have early running backs that are locked into workhorse. Grab 4 of them. Grab 5. Max out.
Interesting. So you're starting that draft trying to grab 4 running backs.
I am starting that draft. Yeah, I'll absolutely grab 4 running backs. I'm happy to do that in my first 4 rounds because then I can load up and get 9 wide receivers if I need. I've got a solid running back core, and then I've got such a pool of players because when Djax goes off for that long bomb, he's in my roster. When Quincy Enunwa or someone late just ends up with a solid game of 88 yards and 7 receptions, no touchdown, he's going to get in, and my running backs carry. So to me, I'm talking much more. I believe that you want 4 to 6 running backs, 6 to 9 wide receivers, 2-3 of the quarterback and tight end.
I have a follow-up question.
Yes, sir. State your name.
My name is Andy. Is that what is a kit and caboodle?
A kit and caboodle.
It's not a kitten.
No, it's not a kitten. It's a whole kit and caboodle.
It's a
lot of
kit
times
and a
people
caboodle.
think that this has to do with George Kittle, but that's Kittle and bits.
A caboodle is a group, bunch, lot, pack, or collection of things or people.
Yeah,
Does that start with a K or a C?
It starts with a K because it is a spelling derivative of the English word caboodle that started with a C.
Okay, so you do kit with a K, caboodle with a K. Kit and caboodle.
Yes.
Yeah. You don't just want the caboodle.
No.
You need the whole
If you
kit.
get stuck with the caboodle, that looks – that's like
You
losing
look
to, that's like
foolish.
losing to Brooks and I in shuffleboard.
Oh, my goodness. Challenge!
That is it for today's episode of the show. A reminder, if you go to fantasydraftwizard.com right now, you can mock draft, and then we'll grade you. And it's free. So that's what I wanted them to know.
That's the caboodle.
That's the caboodle you're missing.
Hey, Philly, I better see your sweet faces tonight.
Be nice, Philly.
And New York tomorrow. I love you all. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Fantasy Footballers Podcast. Join our fantasy football community on jointhefoot.com and follow us on Twitter @TheFFBallers.